Okay, welcome back to Divine Ethereal Beings. On this podcast episode, we have decided to do as a little bit of a special request from some of our own enlightenment lately around very specific things that, we're like, man, we got to do something on this one. So, this is one that's kind of about listening to your team and your intuition and how free will will always take place no matter what, in allowing us to make our own decisions, whether we're getting an intuitive hit or not. So I'm going to start this one by telling everybody the story about why we ended up kind of doing this. And now it's kind of this relevant, funny term we often use when we've now eaten the subway, is basically what the term is. So the story is a little while back in January of this year, I was at my parents' place and I was really hungry. I was in a neighboring town and I'm just like, oh, I'm really hungry. I'm just going to grab some Subway for my supper tonight. I had a busy day and I didn't want to go home and cook anything. Plus, I'm not at I'm not at home either, right? I was at my parents' place. So I'm just like, oh, it's just so much easier to grab food. So, but I kept getting this inkling from my team that was like, don't eat it. No, don't do it today. Don't, no. And I'm like, why? I'm starving. It's good. Like I want to go and eat Subway. So I got this Subway and I brought it home and I ate it when I got back to my parents' place. And I mean, I was like, okay, it was good. It was fine. I'm rolling. I'm fine. And then as I'm getting ready to go to sleep that night, all of a sudden I'm getting nudges to like take out my contacts and like do these things. And I'm like, oh, but my contacts aren't even really bothering me, but I guess I'll take them out anyway. So I take out my contacts and I go to sleep. And about 2 hours later, it's about 12:30 at night. I wake up and I'm like super nauseous. I was like, this is not a very good sign. And I got so sick. I was up all night that night. I think my dad finally caught me coming out of the washroom at about 4 o'clock in the morning. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, not really. I am super sick. I'm pretty sure I got food poisoning. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And I'm like, yeah, there's nothing I can do. And I'm just kind of like, you go through the process, right? And as I'm laying there at 5 o'clock in the morning with no sleep and so sick, and I thought, oh my God, this is why they were telling me not to eat the Subway. They knew it was going to happen, right? And yet I still chose not to listen to it. And I was like, I'm hungry, I'm going to do it anyway. And so that's again, that free will of choice will always be in play, whether it's being presented of like, maybe you shouldn't, we're trying to save you from pain and suffering in this moment. It doesn't mean we're not still going to get to the end game. It just is a little bit of a different path that doesn't always feel so great. So again, whole disclaimer, obviously this was in like one location. We know that we can get sick from anywhere at any point in time. I'm not blaming anybody. It happens. And if you love Subway, that's great. I hope you continue loving Subway. But for me in that one moment, that was definitely not a love of Subway when it comes back to haunt you like that. So yeah. And then now we're going to move this through how this experience has started taking us in like these light bulb moments of like, man, I just ate the Subway. I got this intuitive hit and I still did it anyway, right? So if you want to share some of like your moments, that would be fantastic. So they can play into this.
Yeah, and I feel like it's interesting because you were sick for days. Like it
Mhm.
took you many days to recover.
It
Like
was
this was
4.5 days.
yeah, like it was not just a little, like it really wrecked your body. And I mean, yeah. So and we utilize this joke now, right? Like, oh shit, I ate the Subway. Like, for instance, and sometimes it's like a quick momentary thing, and then sometimes it can be days of suffering it's preventing you, right? So for me, last week or the week before, I don't know when it was, in the morning, I was trying to call my mom. Couldn't get through on her house line. Yes, she saw his house line. Couldn't get through on the house line, couldn't get through on the cell phone, right? Couldn't, like, tried a few different things and couldn't get through. And so, like, okay, I didn't think anything of it. Okay. Like, I really, like, at that moment in time, I wasn't aware that, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk to her. Maybe I don't want to discuss this topic with her or whatever else. Right. So then later that day, several hours later, I decided, I'm going to call her and try and talk to her. And so I got a hold of her, and the conversation that ensued was highly unpleasant. It was like, even once I got a hold of her and was on the phone with her, there was a lots of like static and not good connection because we were both on our cell phones and she was driving through somewhere. So there was like several layers of the guides and team being like, maybe you don't want to have this conversation right now. And so it was a very like, it was a very just upsetting conversation. And I told Dayna after, like, damn it, I ate the Subway. Like, what the hell? They were trying to help me. And like, I didn't pay attention. I wasn't aware. I wasn't listening. Like, I just was in autopilot, really, right? About like what I wanted to do. And I think that quite often that's when it happens, is in those kind of autopilot-ish moments.
Totally. And I totally agree with that. Like, even for myself, like, and it's funny because we're aware enough, we hear them, right? Like, we hear them. Like, I straight up heard them, don't eat it. You know? But I was like, I'm hungry. Like, get out of my way. I want my food. I want to do these things. And like, it was just in that moment of that autopilot. Like, it's just like, let's get our stuff and let's go and eat, because now you get the hangry happening too, right? Like, you just need some food. And that can happen at any point in time, obviously, even with your own situation too, like you said. And it's so relevant. It's more relevant in the fact that when we are on autopilot and when, the body and the brain are just doing these things that it's always used to been doing, like reaching out to mom. I mean, I remember trying to reach out to my mom about something. Um, but this time I didn't eat the Subway and I was actually listening because she didn't answer, or she forgot to call me back or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe that's for a reason then. Maybe I wasn't supposed to say whatever it was in that moment, in that situation, that I was going to tell her. And all of a sudden I just had like the whoosh of like, yes, like it's okay. You can just leave it as is. It doesn't need to be told. But I'm like that person that I'm so close with my mom that sometimes you just get in conversation, you just start talking about things, right? And it's not that I'm saying confidential things, of course, but it's just like in general about things that are on a different level sometimes that some people just don't always understand. And I mean, in those moments too, you just get so used to it and you blab, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, why did I just do that? Right? Exactly that. Like, now it's causing me pain and suffering, or maybe it's brought up this turmoil, or some kind of argument ensues out of a situation, or, like all these things that they're just trying to help us in a way avoid the pain and suffering that we cause on ourselves a lot of the time. I mean, obviously we know that we create our own realities, and it all is coming from beliefs and autopilot and all these programs. But when we choose to, even ignore even the intuitive hits that are coming in, we're still choosing to say, well, this is my easier path right now in the moment. Because even for me, when I got Subway that day, it was my easier path. It was like, here's the food, right? I could have chose to go and grab food somewhere else, but that just felt like my easiest option right there. And I was like, well, I don't want to detour. I don't want to go somewhere else, right? This just makes it easier. But the easier path is not always the better path, aka why we are making this episode in general.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that Gigi said. She's like, fast, cheap, and easy. Pick two,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You whatever two you pick, then you can't have the other one. And that's, it's so relevant here, right? Like fast, cheap, easy.
And I had all three. So, all three definitely didn't turn out well for myself. That was 4.5 days of suffering that I definitely could have avoided. And the craziest part about it, and I remember you and I were talking, and I think we were trying to do an episode. We were going to try and do an episode, and I was just like, I just can't even do this because, it went from being super sick and not being able to leave the bathroom basically to being okay enough that I was able to drive home and I felt like I was okay. But then all this weird, like the gas in the system, like just, it was almost like I had somebody blowing up a balloon consistently in my body. And it was so uncomfortable. And it just was, I just thought, what is going on? Like, I thought, I was over this, and it wasn't over it. And it took another 2.5 days for that to actually go away. And I was taking some serious medication by that point because I'm like, I just need this to be gone. I was so uncomfortable. And again, it was like, why did I eat the Subway? Like, I honestly could have changed. This could have been a whole different week for myself. And I had to reschedule everything. Like, it was just, everything had to move out of the way. And so listening to our own intuition, it can be hard. It can be hard because they might be presenting you something with another option that seems harder in the moment, than just going with whatever in that moment you're saying no to them and choosing something different. But boy, try to remember this story because it might save you 4.5 days worth of suffering that, is so immense to the point where I remember I was like crying on the couch one night because I was just in so much pain. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. This has got to stop. And thinking back to it now, I think it just enlightened me even more to like really listen when those intuitive hits are coming, especially when they're kind of coming out of nowhere and you're not really asking questions and it's just like kind of being dropped on you, or preventative aspects like mom's not answering the phone, like just taking that as it's not personal, but it's trying to save you from some kind of pain or suffering that might be coming from it in the end as well.
Yeah, and this can be, I mean, if we want to just stay on the topic of food, I can't tell you how many times I've gone in and sat down at a restaurant and they've brought the water and I've had to get up and leave because there's just something, and oftentimes it's not even related to the food. It's just related to the energetics, or it could be like somebody who's going to be there that you don't want to be around or see. It could be anything is the point. Like, it's just trusting it. And then also it's so relevant too to like with how long you were down after the fact. It's really common that, like, I mean, this isn't the case for you. It's not like you weren't listening to like taking a rest or taking a break, but something that people often get caught up in our society now is the doing, the going. And spirit is telling them, like, slow down, rest, do nothing, have a break, right? And people don't listen. And so they get taken out with an illness or an injury or food poisoning or whatever, right? Like, it's so important to listen and not eat the subway.
Not eat the subway. Exactly. And that's a beautiful part. Yes, we all have free will here, and that's something that's even come up a bit lately in some of my other readings and stuff, is about free will in general, and that you will always have choice. No matter how far you choose to expand into yourself, how far you choose to listen to your intuition, how much you want to integrate all of that into your life. No matter what, every day you're still going to get the choice whether you're going to listen to it or not. That never just turns into no choice anymore, and that this is it and this is the one and only path. That's the whole point about us being human in this experience, is being able to have that choice. So yeah, I'm sure we'll all still have lots of don't eat the subway moments, but at the same time, learn from the factor of like, okay, that's right. I was kind of getting these notions or these hits to say, maybe avoid this situation or leave this alone for now, or don't eat this or that, or don't go to that place right now. It just doesn't feel very good. Right. And if you listen to it, I guarantee you, they are trying to save you from pain and suffering being inflicted on yourself. And yet, if we don't, that's okay. Have some grace with yourself too. You just know that you have to take the little bit of a harder path, but it doesn't mean it changes everything in your life, right? It just means that there's something else you're going to have to process and move through in a bit of a different way than maybe if you had chosen not to engage in the thing of whatever the intuitive hit was kind of giving you.
Yeah, they're showing me how often it is for people to just have all these closed doors, and
Mhm.
how like you just got to get through that closed door. Like, the door is so clearly closed. There are so many obstacles blocking your path, and it's I I I run across so many people even in the spiritual world who have done a lot of work in one way or another, who still are caught in this need to like push through. And I get, okay, it might take some like dedication to your practices or to you what you're bringing into this world, like, yes, and also recognize like that is different than pushing through doors that are very specifically closed for a
Yeah.
reason. But back to the free will, there's only so much that they can do from the other side to guide you, because you're the one in body. You're the one making the choice, and they will try and guide you, but like they can't stop you. Also, you're going to do what you're going to do.
Yeah, they're just trying to drop the marshmallows on the path for you and see if you find them or not. Like, are you going to choose to pick that one up today or not? Right. And that's, I mean, again, they're only ever trying to help us to our highest good. Your gut instinct, your intuition, your whatever the hell you want to call it, it's always going to lead you in the best direction for yourself, no matter what, if you choose to listen to it. I've had some people come to me and question a little bit. I mean, again, this comes down to the fact, if we look at society and how much these things have been pushed about having control of your own life. It's like this massive thing that's constantly kind of taught to us. Well, if you're in control of your life, you're good, right? And in reality, that's just not really true ever, because there's always a set path that we've talked about in other podcasts and some other topics that you can learn definitely more about all that if you want to go back and listen to some other episodes. But in this round, it's just remembering that just the things that we've been taught doesn't mean they have to continually be integrated in your life, because a part of that's already caused pain and suffering. So choosing to listen to your intuition, your team, whatever you wish to call it, your loved ones on the other side, they're all a part of it. But remembering time's also not linear. So when they are telling me don't eat the Subway, they already know what's going to happen if I make that decision. They already seen those timelines emerging, right? It's not linear time of how I know we feel like we're living, in a day-to-day motion. So also remembering that everything's being seen from a very different perspective when it comes to your team. So if you're unsure and you're questioning them, you got to get to know and understand how the world actually works a little different on the energetic levels before you'll probably start to trust enough to know, right, they actually do understand and see what is coming long before I probably ever would in my human form. So do I listen and save myself some pain and suffering? Sure. Great. If you do, wonderful. If not, that's okay too. You might just have to rough it out, right? And that's the part of free will. That's part of our learning. That's part of our experience of getting to do these things here on Earth. And they call it schoolroom Earth for a reason. You'll learn lessons every day, all the time, right? So, and it's a never ending thing. We can get very good at it. We become very aware, but am I probably going to listen to my intuition every single day, all the time? No, because at all the time moments will fall back into an autopilot, right? If something triggers into, like, if your morning routines are autopilots as well. And that will set your tone for your entire day. So if you can interrupt your morning routine, you're getting good at being aware and being comfortable in the uncomfortable spaces that are created. Because I try to do this more to myself lately as well, is like interrupt my morning routine. I don't allow myself to continually just do the same things over and over again, because I want to become to a space where not only am I getting to the point where I'm listening more even first thing in the morning, but creating space for new things to happen. And I think that's also extremely important in where we are and what's happening. We've got the eclipse here. We've got massive energy that's shifting and changing. People are breaking out with swords and shields. They're literally fighting the air. Like there's so much going on right now that people's control feels like it's kind of melting, right? And so a lot of people right now are getting panicky. And so, you've got your lovely team and your higher self and all these beings that are trying to help you in energy. And if you're not listening, though, your pain and suffering is going to shoot through the roof here, because of the energetic shifts that we've got coming. It is immense. I can't explain how immense it is, because it's going to change things on a much deeper level than people even realize. And it's going to come down to how much pain and suffering do you really want in your life? Because you're going to have to lose some of that resistance to even be able to hear or listen to the intuitive hits that are coming in. So
Yeah. I mean, and bottom line is they have more information than we do, period. They're
yes,
not limited by a physical body. So,
exactly.
like, why wouldn't you want their help? Why wouldn't you want to listen? Why wouldn't you want to learn how to tune in, learn how to receive, develop those skills on your own for what they are for you? We're not saying you have to be here doing what we're doing, but everybody can develop their intuition and their ability to communicate with their team and their guides. And it really just makes life not only easier, but more fun, quite honestly.
Well, you lose the factor where you feel so pressured to figure it all out anymore. It's like you really get to be this kid in the sandbox who's like, there's my juice box on the edge. I'm going to build my sandcastle, and I know mom's going to have supper on the table for me when I'm done here, and that's kind of how, when you start co-creating and listening to the universe and understanding how things are actually working here, it does get to be a lot more fun. It does get to be a lot more relaxed. We're not supposed to live in this high stressful life. It's just not. I mean, can you imagine if a rabbit right now lived in the high stress most people carry with them? They would fall over from a heart attack so bloody fast, because it's just so much for the body to try and adjust to. And not only that, no wonder why there's so many people's bodies becoming even more physical, and the symptoms are starting to come out even more, because the stress levels, you can't live in that stressful state of being. You just can't. I mean, it's going to take you out eventually, because your body's going to say, I cannot hold this any longer. And so in which, again, coming to this place where if you can make your life easier, why the hell wouldn't you want to?
And then too, like, also you start to realize you're not alone. Like, there's so many benefits. We can't even sit here and name them all.
Yeah, there's
I can't.
definitely, I would say there's no consequences
Yeah.
because there isn't. I mean, it's only ever benefits. Now, some people might say, well, there's consequences because I have to feel. But that's naturally how we were made. We were meant to feel in the first place, friends. It's not a consequence to feel, it's actually a gift. It allows you to have a capacity that no other species on this planet can feel the way a human being can feel. And I mean, they're giggling at me there because like you got horses, but horses are a whole different, category on their own. They're not feeling necessarily in the same way as a human does. They're living in an energetic world and a physical world at the same time that's just more integrated than what a human being naturally is.
Well, feeling and being able to feel and give the feeling meaning. So animals can feel in part certain ways, but they don't have this brain that's assigning all these meanings and stories and beliefs with it, right? Like, that's unique only to humans.
Yes. Yeah. That's the differences between the consciousness that exists here. We say human collective consciousness because we are the only ones with that type of consciousness. It's to that level that's very different. I would say the only thing that was probably come close would be a dolphin. But again, a dolphin's way of their consciousness and how they're also set up is still quite different because they're still no one's ever told them the energetic worlds don't exist. Right. So yeah, it's definitely a very interesting space when it comes to the evolution of our consciousness right now, but that's what it is. We're not evolving physically this time. It is an evolving of the mind. So in which if we're telling you, don't eat the subway, don't eat the subway. Make your life a little easier and get to know your intuition and start listening to it because it does help you immensely. And honestly, it's again from some of the readings I've done lately, that's what people are asking me. They're like, I just want my life to be simpler. I just want things to get better. I just want things to smooth out again. And the first thing that always gets dropped in is says, well, start listening to yourself and your higher self and your intuition more. And I promise you it will. It's a chore. I'm not gonna lie though. Like it's a skill. It's something you're gonna have to build up. It's something you're gonna have to get used to. But that's why we're here. We have a community that is going to help with all of this as well. You've got experiences. You want to figure out what's been going on. Maybe you've had your own don't eat the subway moments and you want to explore more of that. Our community is a place that we're making a sacred space to do that exactly. And we have all of it up and going. The link is in the description.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I don't have any much more to add to this one, I don't think. We'll leave this one as a shorter, I believe. And come join us if you wish and look forward to I say seeing, that's so funny. Hopefully you'll tune into us on the next episode.